Call to order the August. Okay. Recording.
Not quite.
The progress bar is taking its sweet time.
Where's the agenda for services?
I'm looking at it on the web page. Do we have a copy of it too? You have an agenda for them?
Yes.
Okay.
There's one after the
Okay. So you find there. I don't see them pronounced. We're good? Okay. So we're going to call to order the August 4th meeting of the Services Committee. And start with the roll call.
Danny Apple.
Here.
Martin Fisher.
Here.
Greg Elliott.
Here.
Lee Present.
All right. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes from the last meeting? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second. Roll call?
Greg Elliott.
Yes.
Martin Fisher.
Yes.
Danny Apple.
Yes.
3 yeas.
All right. Doesn't appear that we have any visitors. I know that, and we don't have any scheduled visitors, correct? Okay. So open issues. The big thing that I know I was hoping to talk about and hopefully get cleared up tonight is the objects in the right-of-way issue that we had. We've had some interesting developments with that too. Steve, could you bring us up to speed on that?
Sure. Mr. Bream, I think that got forwarded to you today. He
Yeah.
spoke with our insurance company about the specific to the basketball hoop. And the insurance company expressed some reservations, pretty serious reservations about it being in the right of way. In our level of liability, once we know that it's there. And their recommendation was not to have it there. So we've had that issue come up. Then the other thing that happened last week is if you see the forms, Joe Sauve started to form up a knee wall in front of his business that's actually in the right of way. In the central business district, pretty much the storefronts are the property lines and the rest of it's right of way. And Al and I went over and talked to him about it, asked him, what's going on. He said his intention was to create a knee wall similar to what we have for a couple purposes. One was to increase the safety of anybody that's waiting to come into his restaurant. And the second purpose was to create a little bit of a noise barrier in terms of, as tires grind on pavement, they bounce some noise up into the restaurant, and he thought that would improve that situation. Previously, he had a planting in that area. It was about 1.5 feet, 2 feet wide, between salting the streets and salting his sidewalks. He could not keep anything growing or thriving in there at all. And so he concluded that he thought a knee wall would be a good use for that. It'll actually create a little more 6 inches to maybe 1 foot of extra flat pavement to the curb. And then the knee wall would be there. He doesn't have an intention to put out a patio or have a sidewalk cafe. He just was doing the project to, safety, noise control, and get a maintenance issue out of his hands in terms of the plantings. We told him that at this point, either stop or realize that you're doing things at risk. He elected not to pour concrete over the weekend, but he did work on the forms and getting some steel in to provide some connection into the ground, give it some stability. And I believe he's going to come to council tonight to talk about the project. They would like to move it forward. And he did a really good job renovating a building in downtown. He's made it a viable business again. And I don't have any reservations about it. I don't know from an engineering perspective, if there's any issues with it. It's proximate to the right of way, but I think if we learned one thing, it was with Dave Martin's situation that sometimes it's not a bad thing when you've got people close to the right of way to have something to
Mhm.
stop a vehicle before it's, and I don't know, at least once a week you read a story about a vehicle ending up into a restaurant or retail establishment. It seems to be a growing issue. So,
Or Dave Martin's house.
yeah, in like Dave's house.
So just to draw a point of clarification too, between this knee wall and the basketball hoop, we don't really have any insurance concerns on our part about the knee wall being added.
We haven't talked specifically with them about the knee wall,
Okay.
and we'll do that. You know, that would be, if you're okay with telling him yes, then, you know, that could be a contingency on it that would run it through our insurance company. I don't think it's not the same kind of a attractant as a piece of play equipment in terms of,
And that was the specific concern, was that it was play equipment in the.
yeah, that it
in
was
the
going to
meadows.
get a lot of use, that the curb may have not have been an appropriate place underneath the basketball court. And, you know, they were concerned about having it. Now, I have been doing some research. Cincinnati has a reasonable process for someone to apply to use the right of way. They allow them to use it for planters up to like 3 or 4 feet tall, things like that. Little less of a fixed object, obviously, than a wall, but there are some communities that have found a way around it. And the other thing we could do is, with having a permit to occupy, we could insist that there's an insurance and that we are co-insured on his insurance for liability related to it. So,
We do that for the knee wall also.
yeah,
Yeah.
we could minimize or, you know, at
Mhm.
least control our risk to some degree by having us a co-insured, you know, and also insured on a liability policy that he would have for the business.
I got a chance to read most of those that you sent me from the other municipalities and such. I think, just to bring you guys up to speed, I talked to Steve the other day about maybe a potential solution for this being to have some kind of what would you say it was, a license or a registration or something like that?
A limited right to occupy the right, a revocable right to occupy the right.
That we'd get to review on a case-by-case basis, or whoever would get to review. I don't know, would that go BZA or a appointed group or what? How has that been handled usually?
I've seen some that are done at an administrator level. I've seen some that are done at a council level in terms of granting that revocable right.
So what I wanted to run by you guys was if that seemed like a reasonable way to handle right-of-way issues, because we have a number of them that are very different in necessity and in the type of intrusion that there is. There was a second basketball hoop down on the cul-de-sac of Saffron too. I'm not sure. It's just one that's driven into the ground. I don't think it's a big deal, but I want to know for sure what qualifies, what poses an insurance issue, so that we can be consistent across the board.
I would say if it's fixed in any manner, you know, if it's not something that's moving in and out of the right of way, then it's definitely at a higher risk.
So would they need to apply for that that revocable permit?
The basketball court.
Yeah. Or is this
Yes,
for the knee wall, or is this for both?
I think for everything, anytime somebody, commercial or residential, wants to put something in the right of way, that's nice, consistent
I agree. with
across the
that.
board.
Okay.
But then we're going to have to figure out the system from there, the process from there.
Gotcha.
Um,
What is it called again? Revocable?
I've seen it termed a revocable right to occupy the right of way.
and revocable because if it poses a a problem for us in the future, we can make them get rid of it again. Yeah.
Would that, I'm sorry, would that require them to carry some type of insurance liability, like okay. Because if they don't, then we can revoke it if they don't provide proof of insurance, basically. Okay.
Is that something that would be approved by services committee or would be approved by administrator? Or I know you said it was both, but I guess that would be for what, us to decide or council to decide or?
I've seen them as kind of two-part processes where, you know, it would get reviewed at an administrative level and then moved on to you, or reviewed at an administrative level and then declined, and then they would have the right to appeal to council.
Okay. That would
What do
probably
you
be,
think?
that would probably be the better way to go, I would think.
I agree. I don't think we need to clutter up council time necessarily if it's easy calls to make, especially.
Yeah, let the administrator make that decision, and if it's declined, they can appeal and bring it to council.
Bring it to council.
I like that idea.
Excellent.
Because what if we set up some parameters, you have to have insurance and you have to explain what it is and everything, then you would have the power to approve it or deny it. If it didn't meet those parameters we set, I like that idea.
I'm assuming we'd need to involve Dave Bream in figuring this out. Put something to paper.
Yes.
And then probably need to pass it at our next meeting or at council. Now
And what
that,
happens, I guess, if we approve it and neighbors complain about it, then do they bring it to council and?
well, one of the things that we had talked about was if neighbors got to weigh in or not. Now, in the case of Serve, the neighbor has basically signed off on it, correct?
Yeah, he's supportive of it. because
Right.
He sees it as an improvement in his property also.
So I guess that's just one of the choices we get to make as far as how we set it up.
Yeah.
I mean, we should, if people want to bring up the issue, we should let them bring up the issue. That doesn't mean that they change their mind or, but we shouldn't allow them to have a voice, right?
And would they bring it to council or would they bring it to the services committee meeting, I guess?
Or to the administrator.
But I think
Oh, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
we're
they
administrator.
bring it to the administrator.
Okay.
And if they're not happy, then they can bring it to, they're not satisfied. But I think maybe once it gets to us, that's probably it.
Allow the neighbors to appeal the same way that the owner would.
Yeah.
I think
That's a
that
good
makes
idea.
sense.
It was interesting with the Serve one. Our first point was, hey, you're along a state highway that ODOT has some rights to, talk with them. And ODOT was like, yeah, we're okay with it. So
That was the easy part. was
it was
ODOT.
really surprising in some ways, I thought.
Okay, so to lay out the plan, we need to talk to Dave Bream, come up with a draft for how this is going to work, and then approve it at probably our next meeting. What do we do about Serve in the meantime, who's already started?
And the basketball hoops that are already there.
Yeah, I think based upon the letter that he received from our insurance agent, I think we really have to look closely at all of them to make sure, but they were pretty forceful in their reservations on allowing anything in the right of way without a process, at least without a process. And in general, I think they were concerned about that a street's not designed to be an appropriate basketball court.
If I might,
Yeah,
Please do.
yes, please.
because you pay me to be here, so I might as well talk to it. I didn't delve into this matter as deeply as all of you have, but it seems to me that the insurance company was more concerned with the fact that our code doesn't provide for anything in the right of way and we were allowing it. If our code provided for things in the right of way, such as sidewalk cafes, I think they would be less inclined to be so hesitant regarding this matter. so long as the installation complied with whatever rules and regulations we set forth. And so I think the code needs to be revised to allow for this type of permit or program, much as our sidewalk cafe code allows for, the tables to be on the sidewalk. And while it doesn't talk about right of way, sidewalks are almost always in the right of way. Our sidewalk cafe code does, I believe, defer to the zoning official for the permit process. The appeal process is to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which today now might be the BZA in lieu of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I don't know if an appeal from there is to council or not. There are requirements in the sidewalk cafe for liability insurance, with the village being co-named or named co-insured or whatever the term is. Tim? Oh, Tim's gone. Co-insured. So, and then it is revocable. The permit is revocable, and it says by the village. I don't know who that means. I don't know if that means the village official, the zoning official has the right to revoke it, or if it requires an action of council or the commission or whatever. But it does say that it is revocable by the village. And I'm sure there are standards and guidelines. So I throw that out there as a maybe a counterbalance to the conversation. But it does need this guy.
Do we need to
Yeah.
specify then who by the village, should we have by the village administrator or by the city council? Like, should we specify who is revocable by?
Who
Who can
Yes.
actually
Yes.
revoke the?
Yeah, so who issues the permit should be identified, I believe, whether it's a zoning official or whether it's the administrator.
Yeah.
It also, in our sidewalk cafe, says that the application shall be submitted to the fire department, the police department, the administration, and the engineer. I believe those are the four that it says who gets it. So it specifically says who the application goes to for review.
Yeah.
And each of those entities therefore have an opportunity to comment on the feasibility of the application.
Okay.
I think I don't know if the sidewalk code is a good go by, but they set forth a lot of things that you've just been discussing here regarding.
Close.
Yeah.
So.
Just taking notes, sorry. Okay, so then for the issues that we have currently, it kind of extends the weight on them, but it seems like it'd be reasonable to leave them all with what they have right now while we develop the process, then ask them to go through the process. And in the case of Serve, if he wants to continue, then he just takes the risk that he does something that doesn't get approved in the long run. Would that be, I'm just a little concerned that it's started already. So, it's going to take us at least a couple weeks to get something put into action.
We probably need Breen to say something along the lines.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think we do. I agree with you completely on that. The thing about Serve, to me, is he's pushed the envelope on that right-of-way issue before with his trash containers. He wants them off the sidewalk and in the right-of-way, in the grass lawn between the sidewalk and the edge of the pavement. And we've told him no. I'm sorry, I've told him no. So there's never been an official application of any kind to the village. Not that there's a process for that anyway. But so we're not gonna have trash trucks, coming in there and jumping over the curb and whatever else we're gonna do. It's, we had this discussion with him before he bought it or just after he bought it. He said, you need to find a place for your trash because it's not going to go there. And so, this is not new to him. He's familiar with our concerns regarding protection of the right of way.
His trash cans are in the right of way right now, right?
They're on the sidewalk, I believe.
Which,
Up against his building, and I'm not sure exactly where the right of way is in there. If his building's on the property line, the right of way line, then yeah, his trash should.
I think we need to talk about that too. I saw grease running across the sidewalk. It's a more narrow sidewalk on the north side of Columbus Street than it is on the south side. South side has to be 6
Columbus Street, east-west.
or south. Street.
Columbus runs north-south.
Right.
So
So
which
on
side?
on the east side, it's more narrow. What
Okay.
did I say?
To the
I
north
said
side.
north.
Okay.
My
Sorry.
fault.
Sorry. On the east side, it's more narrow. There's grease running across the street and the trash cans often overflow. And I know we're saying it's up against this building. There's no delineation between what's sidewalk and if any of that concrete is owned by him.
Well, there's also I think the fire escape. And I think they're kind of tucked under the fire escape, so. Yeah. Or they were at one time.
They are, yeah.
I think he's done a really nice job, making the building nice.
Mhm.
I think we should continue to work together with him. I love their food.
Same.
Love the
He's
place,
a really good guy and he's done a really nice job with that building.
and it's a tough site. No
So
doubt.
I think we need to try to help him solve it. I don't know what that is. But to my point about the wider sidewalk on the west side versus east, one option is we make the sidewalks a lot wider, or we create the buffer, create a buffer between the building and the sidewalk. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I just know there's real estate to work with on his side of Columbus. Sorry to jump in there.
No, you're good. You're good. So basically, we need to work with Dave Bream on that. Are you able to get the ball rolling on that, Steve?
Yes.
And do you want one of us in on that? Or is that something that,
Let Dave and I take a hack at it,
Okay.
and then we'll get the hack out to you guys and
that sounds good.
see how it looks.
Are you guys happy with that?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's a good resolution.
Excellent.
I just, in the meantime, what do we do? But, that's the tough part.
Yeah, and I guess Dave will advise us on that. I think waiting's probably better than telling somebody that they're either good or to tear their stuff down.
Can we ask him to just hold off until we can?
That's pretty much, I've told him, don't pour.
Okay.
He said, do you mind if I put in the steel that I want to connect in with the ground, some tie-ins? And I said, I didn't have a big issue with that, but realized it may have to come out, or it may form the strongest piece of sidewalk that we have in Sunbury.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item is Sunbury Mills street tree options. So
I put a little PowerPoint together for you. I'll just kind of walk through it with you if that's okay. Little bit of background. The subdivision is late 90s, early 2000s, so it's almost 20 years old. I'm on the this one.
He was mentioning the Sunbury Mills street trees.
Oh, that's
Sidewalk.
not the-
that's right. No, yeah,
Yes.
I'm on to the States.
Sunbury Mills, not Sunbury Estates.
Yeah, you guys, that's yours.
Where did we leave off with this one?
We are approaching completion of a tree planting plan. Our recommendation to you on how you might replant the trees that were removed recently, and so it was not ready for tonight, but I'm told it'll be ready by the end of the week or early next week at the latest. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm not going to give it that big of a review because a tree is a tree. To me, unfortunately, I know the difference.
Not an
between-
arborist?
I am not. I know the difference between a pine tree and a maple, but I've misnamed other trees as maples in the past. So anyway, I'll leave it to the landscape architects and those guys that understand the trees. And they picked smallish trees because we only have a 5.5 foot tree line in that neighborhood, and the other street trees are kind of smallish as well. So it doesn't make sense to us to put in big giant trees if the other, and we still have about half of the original trees. The original Canadian sand cherries are still there. So they're, so anyway, we'll present it to you for your consideration, maybe to the Parks Committee. I'm not sure who best to review it first. Maybe it just comes into Steve and then it goes to council. For consideration. We'll figure that out, but, I'll stop talking. It's almost done and I'll get it out. I'll get it out as a draft to all you, to everyone as soon as it's available.
Okay.
What neighborhood was this again? I missed the,
I think it'll be the end of this week or the beginning of next.
I'm sorry, what neighborhood is?
Oh, Sunbury
Mills.
Mills, okay.
It's Martin's neighborhood.
Yeah. Just Martin. Nobody else.
I was gonna say, there's no one else that lives there, right?
One other thing is, I would recommend that some point throughout the process, probably after we get the plan, but before there were action to be taken, that this board or representatives from Sunbury sit down with representatives from the HOA to make sure we're aligned with the responsibilities, the deeds and deed restrictions, covenants, all of that good stuff.
Mr. St. John, do you recall off the top of your head, the stuff I've sent out is how many trees we were replacing? Was it 60,
It was 53.
53? Okay, so if a tree is, let's say 50 round numbers, and a tree is $300 planted round numbers, that's 15,000. I don't know if that's within your code's ability to not bid that. So you could send out the plan when we give you some planting specs to go with it. And you could just send it to maybe 3 nurseries locally and just ask for a quote rather than pay, when we bid something for you, it's, $4,000 to put the package together, advertise it, distribute it, receive the bids and all that crap. You're not going to save $4,000 by bidding it compared to getting quotes, getting competitive quotes.
It's not only below our threshold, it's below the statutory threshold.
Okay, so you might have that option of how to find a contractor to plant this for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sidewalk repair replace.
Sorry, I was jumping. So a little bit of background. We're looking at about a 15 to 20-year-old development at this point. There are concerns in the neighborhood about sidewalks, and the trees have really done a number on some of them. They're almost to the point where you can see the bottom of the panel. They're so offset. We do have a Sunbury code piece on sidewalk maintenance, and it's basically the duty of the abutting owner to take care of that. But there's tensions between when the conversations I've had, they're like, well, you're telling me I can't get rid of this tree, and yet this tree has caused this situation. How do we how do we resolve the fact of you're telling me I can't touch the tree and yet I have to fix my sidewalk, and your tree caused my sidewalk to be damaged. So there is a circular kind of discussion going on there. Probably in the spring, I'd worked with a company previously in another community. They call it sidewalk cutting. It's kind of, they slice it. They've got a diamond saw that's, and they've got a vacuum on it and things like that. And they basically slice off that offset, and they, make it ADA compliant, what little slope is left. And they can go up to about 1.5 inches doing that. But one of the things that they offer as part of giving you a quote is to do an assessment and identify the defects that are over 1/2 inch. That's an ADA piece. And this is the map of the defects that they found, that sidewalk assessment map. And as you can see, pretty much the whole neighborhood is littered with blue dots from, offsets that need some form of repair, that are considered a trip hazard. There are 299 of them, and 13 panels that they said they can't touch. They're going to have to be torn out and replaced. 82% of those sidewalk deficits, when I went through their report, there's a notation about trees. They're proximate to a tree. They're adjoining a tree. So that's obviously a piece of this pie. And that's where I came to the next slide, which says the street trees are a root factor. I think
Yep.
that the study shows that there's a direct relationship between them. That if we repair the sidewalk, just we go in, we slice it, we replace those panels without dealing with the street trees, we're going to be in that situation probably in less than 10 years, because the tree's already established and it's going to continue to grow. So, yeah, it's kind of that definition of insanity, doing the same thing again and expecting a different result. I think there's sufficient room there to have a tree. Currently in our code, I put discourages, but it's pretty much, we don't allow street trees anymore in new
In new
developments.
developments, we do
Yeah,
not,
so,
right, it's a prohibition.
There are some trees that are more, they drive roots down as opposed to driving roots out. So there are some trees that would probably be more appropriate if we end up replacing the trees. And I'm sure they're taking that into account on Sunbury Mills right now in terms of what they replace with. But I think that we need to deal with the street trees and figure out what we're going to do with them before we actually move on to the sidewalks, because that will impact our decision and that will impact our ability to have some kind of a lasting, fix to this. So the options I see, doing nothing is probably not an option at this point, given the trip hazards, the numbers of them. We have the option to enforce the current ordinance, which, we can do. We could enforce the current ordinance and provide them with the less expensive option of repair. We could put a cost sharing mechanism in place. Some communities budget a certain amount for sidewalk repairs every year, and they do a cost sharing. And so, they'll share the cost 50-50 on your sidewalk replacement. We could do a one-time solution. The trees come out, we fix the sidewalks, and then going forward, we revert to our current policy, say, okay, we fixed your situation here, but going forward, property owners abutting the sidewalk, you're going to have to fix it. And if we did that, we could potentially provide the homeowner with an option to install a tree in their yard somewhere, if they're so inclined to do so, in lieu of a street tree. I think the next step, the major next step I think we need to have, and Tim, you're sitting back there, it's good. I think we need to gather resident input, and whether that's an ice cream social where we talk about, hey, this is what we've discovered, here's our different options. And I don't know if we'll get a consensus. We might hit 75%, but, truly gather their input on how they would like to see the situation handled. Would they prefer, we fix it one time, but that one time fix includes taking out your street tree? How many people support that versus keep the street tree and we being the homeowner pays to repair their sidewalk properly. So I think in August, sometime in the evening, having an ice cream social, I'll buy a couple gallons of ice cream and we'll sit up at one of our lovely ponds down there and get a flyer out to the neighborhood, see if there's a Facebook way to reach out. They may have their own Facebook page, and we may be lighting a fuse, but we do engage them and talk about the issue and the various options we have, and that they have a voice in to try to, fix the sidewalks there. The other thing I'd recommend, and we can do that in the intervening time, ODNR has an urban forester program, so we can call our local urban forester, arrange a time for them to come out and just say, here's what we got. Do you have any, and here's kind of the range of things that we've talked about doing. Do you have a better idea or what would be your input on how we go about trying to, engage some professionals? And then if they like throw their hands up and go, or they say, no, outside of our realm, then, potentially engage an arborist to give us some advice. There are ways that it becomes expensive. You can, in some of I've seen communities that will, like if the root's coming through, they'll undercut the root, put pea gravel underneath it, and, with the hope that it'll settle down into that pea gravel and not grow up. But I'm hoping that the forester can tell us why maybe they'll just say those weren't the right trees to be there. But they may also say there's something in that soil. Maybe there's only 2 or 3 feet of usable soil and then it's solid clay underneath that. But when you look at the trees around there, I mean, a lot of them come out of the ground, what I would consider part of the root ball, a good foot up out of the ground. So there's some reason why those trees aren't trying to drive the roots down. But that's kind of my recommendation to you is to, before we spend money, whether that be through an assessment program or through an actual repair of the sidewalks, that we talk with the neighborhood and we assess their affinity for street trees and, we deal with the street tree issue first so that we're not putting money into something that's going to be destroyed in 5 to 10 years. And, I won't be here, but some of you may still be here talking about, I thought we just did this.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, dig it up once if you can. Let's not repeat.
I think the ice cream social idea is the friendliest possible way to approach.
Can I make a suggestion though? Should we get, so I love giving the people options. I think we should have 2, maybe 3 options. And I think we should engage professionals before we give them those options, right? Because we can give them options. We can have the ice cream social and then the professional comes out and says, no, all those are wrong. We got to do it in a different way, right?
Yeah.
So I think we
Good
should
point.
engage with the professionals, whether it's ODNR or the arborist, let them tell us, a few options. And then we gather the input of the residents and we give them 2, maybe 3 options and say, these are the best of what we believe is going to fix this issue long-term.
Yeah, that's a very valid point.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. I also wonder if there would be any point in intentionally waiting on the other street tree issue to potentially do all of the trees the same way if it lines up that way too.
Yeah, if we're gonna,
With the same trees.
if it ends up being replaced, well, we can certainly use that advice for if we end up replacing. We could also potentially get some economies of scale if,
Mhm.
instead of,
How many trees are we talking? Do we have a count on those?
no, I don't.
It's more than the mills, right?
Yes. Well, 82% of and you could have 2 or 3 panels that they said needed to be replaced related to one tree, but I bet there's probably 100 trees involved.
I was gonna say, it's probably about a tree for 3 panels,
Yeah.
right?
that's what I
So
said.
there's about 300 hazards, so probably about 100 trees.
It's potentially a big project, but I don't think we can just continue to kind of have it the way it is. It's only going to get worse. And
Okay. So from here, we engage the experts and then buy ice cream.
yes,
Sounds like a wonderful plan.
I think that's a great idea for that neighborhood.
Mhm.
Folks appreciate that, if we have the 3 definitive options out there, they can say, your choice, it's up to you. consideration.
Yeah.
Let them think that they're making the decision for the most part. I think they would really like that.
And we'll try to get some, some real life costs of, if, this is what we would anticipate. And the other piece of that is you may have some of those houses where by luck of the draw or wherever they planted trees, they may be scot-free and it may not be an issue in front of their house. Most of them obviously have something going on, but I still think gathering that input at some point in time and saying, here's kind of like real life, this could be your cost potentially may help them to make a decision. So
And then we have a pretty active Facebook page over there too, so
good.
I can get the word out if you guys said.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So I'll
Um,
call ODNR yet this week and try to get an engagement with the forester. Anybody from I'll inform you when they're coming in, so at least you'll be aware of that if you want to attend.
I would love to. August is a very busy month, so let me know. I'll
Understandable.
do my best. Okay, so we're starting to run out of time here. Want to see if there's updates on Little Walnut Creek Interceptor Sewer. I have it on my agenda, but I hadn't heard anything about it.
I believe we're working staff, the administration is working to submit a letter to the engineer. We have the easement from the HOA for the AEP easement to allow for the relocation of the electric lines. I will have that delivered to AEP tomorrow. And it'll be in their court to finish executing it, get it recorded, and press forward with the project. Nothing's going to happen until AEP gets their money. They need their contribution in aid of construction before they'll proceed with any further, I suspect. So that matter will need to be addressed as well.
We approved the,
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
we approved that at council, yeah,
Okay.
and the change order for the contractor
For
as
the,
well.
for the county, okay.
Yeah.
Steve, do you know if your predecessor, if Alan signed that form and sent in the check?
I don't think so, but I've seen the form.
Okay.
So
Okay. So we'll, so AEP only needs, I forget the number, 6,400, I think, was what they asked for their contribution and aid. And you've authorized a change order amount, and that those monies are already appropriated, so that's all good. We should be in a, once we get that form in and the money, they should be good to go.
Excellent.
Has the contractor noted anything about delays or,
Not yet.
yeah, so.
He has asked for, he has not asked for any, filed any claims for delays. He has asked for 2 weeks to be added to his schedule.
You grant that?
We have not yet granted that. We will do that with the change order number 1.
Yeah, I mean, the longer we wait, the more he's gonna rack up costs and gonna ask for a second change order, so.
Right.
But there's nothing that we need to do right now but wait.
There was nothing we need to do at this moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, the last item I have on the agenda is the stormwater. I also don't have any updates on that myself yet.
So we've been doing some investigation into the existing system there at Bauman. We euphemistically refer to it as a spaghetti network of piping up there. There's no,
Bowman, I'm sorry. Where's
the
that?
intermediate school, the road on the south side of the, north side of the intermediate school. There's no plans available. The pipes, you can't really figure out which way they go or what they connect to. And I spent about 45 minutes before this meeting out there walking around. Not the best stuff to wear out walking around in the sun. And I'm a little more understanding than my engineer. who was completely baffled. But I'll tell you, we don't know where it goes. It goes back toward Granville Street, and then it looks like it heads north a little bit, but I can't find where it goes or where it discharges. We could spend a lot of money, and I'm not proposing this, but we could spend a lot of money right now running cameras up and down these lines. Now that the water's all drained out, we've had a couple of weeks of dry weather. It's you can access all these pipes, and you know, if we really truly wanted to know where it went, that would be the answer. Or that would be the next step, and that might cost $2,000, $2,400 to spend a day or two of camera work on those things. But the other answer is, you know, you want the water to go away. So maybe we just say we don't care where it is today. We're just going to design a system to capture all that water and get it down to Big Walnut Creek. And
So I was gonna ask is, what are we solving for?
there is street flooding. There is significant street flooding along Bowman when it rains. And it, from what I'm told, it doesn't take a really hard rain to start ponding water on the street. But we did have a couple of really hard rains a month ago or so, and it flooded the street all the way up almost to the top of the curb over at the intermediate school. So it is significant. I don't know that it's so significant. I haven't heard that water has entered any building. I haven't heard that emergency services cannot traverse the flooded street. So it's a major inconvenience, and it's something that shouldn't be happening. But it isn't life-threatening or property-threatening at the moment. At least I don't believe it is. But we still have been asked to solve the problem, and so that's what we're trying to do. We were trying to find the easy answer. There is no easy answer presented to us at this time. So what we'll do is we are assembling our findings. We're gonna do a quick preliminary design. How big does the pipe need to be? 12 inches, 15, 18 inches. And where do we have to take it from, and where do we take it to, and what does that cost? That I will present to you as soon as it's ready. And you can decide whether, you know, if the number is $50,000, is that something we want to do for this problem? Or do you want us to keep looking for a less expensive answer? I'll give you one example real quick. I got about 2 minutes. There is an inlet at the northwest corner of the school on Bowman, and I forget the north-south road that's right there. And it looks like it's about a 12 to 15 inch concrete pipe that goes right toward the football stadium. And then it looks like there's a head wall right there on the hill just inside the fence of the football stadium. The head wall is completely covered with dirt. There's no daylight of the pipe. So if that still goes that way, I don't know where it goes because it can't get out of the pipe. But that's not the inlet that's causing the problem. It's the next inlet to the east. So I'm just baffled as to where this water's going and why they left the pipe in there if they rerouted it somewhere else, maybe when they built the stadium. So it's there's a lot of unknowns, and we can't figure it out just by looking down in the catch basins from the surface. We would need a camera if we really wanted to see where something was going and what was at the end of the pipe. Again, if the answer is, I'm going to simply find you the cheapest, quickest answer I can get for you. And if it's not cheap enough, we'll keep working to find a better answer. So that's where we are with that.
Can I ask a question? And I don't know if this is for you, but what's our liability if we don't fix it, right? Like, if it does flood and someone's home's first floor gets flooded, are we responsible to?
That's a Dave Bream question. I'm going to say that I'm not aware of any communities I've worked in where the community has been responsible for flooding issues.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of like the pothole thing. But, you know, I don't think just because we know that there's a drainage issue here that we're obligated to fix every drainage issue in town, especially these systems are really old up there. You know, there's every kind of pipe you can think about up there, including really old corrugated metal pipes that are half crushed and half corroded. So, you know, we'll do the best we can to get you a solution, and then we can discuss. It's kind of like what you're talking about with the trees. Let's understand what our options are,
and discuss them, and then we'll figure out what's best to do. And so that's what we hope to get you.
All
All right, 5 minutes or less. Does anybody have any new business?
Not for me.
I don't. Steve, do we need to talk about the pond issue tonight that you emailed me about?
I don't think so.
Okay, for future discussion then? All right, then I will move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Roll call?
David Apple,
Yes,
Greg Elliott,
Yes.
Mark Fisher,
Yes.
3 yeas.
thank you.
Street to that.